up to 90% of new jobs are going to require a tertiary education to enable the students to actually do the jobs. And some of the key areas will be in healthcare, which is no surprise to you, social assistance, technological services, education and training. So really what it's saying is that we need a more educated workforce going forward.
I'm Dr. Louise Messara, and this is the Future Health Podcast. Did COVID give us all an insight into what tertiary education will look like in the future? Or was it exactly what we needed? A taste of one sort of future and the chance to design something better. Today we talk with two visionary academics about what tertiary education could and should look like. Dr. Isaac Akefe is a lecturer, research fellow at the Academy for Medical Education at the University of Queensland and an expert biomedical researcher. Jessica Leonard is a specialist in learning and student experience design at the Faculty of Business, Economics and Law at the University of Queensland, and a Doctor of Education candidate at Queensland's University of Technology. Both Isaac and Jessica are fellows of the UK Higher Education Academy. Welcome, Isaac and Jessica. We first came into contact after I'd read your article, A Future View of University Education. And I note that you and your co-authors who aren't here with us today are from varying disciplines. How did you guys come together to create this vision of how university education can evolve? It's an interesting group.
Yes, absolutely. We were invited, along with our two colleagues, Lauren Carpenter and Graham Lee, who are both studying their PhDs at the University of Queensland. We were invited to participate in a panel event for the Higher Education Academy, and the topic was the future of universities. And we really enjoyed the discussion so much as early career academics and as hopeful future leaders in the higher education sector. We enjoyed our discussion so much at the panel that we wrote the article together. And I think one of the things that we really valued about working as a group was the different perspectives that we brought in from the different discipline areas. So Lauren is in the Faculty of Science, Graham is in the Faculty of Health and Behavioural Science, Isaac's in Medicine, and I am in the Business, Economics and Law faculty. We all have a wide range of experience at different universities as well. So bringing in those different voices was really interesting and enriched our discussion about what the future might look like.
I mean, university, at least in theory, is in service to students. So when we think about how it might be different in the future, I guess one thinks about the reflection of the student body itself. And I'm interested in who you guys have when you've been picturing your vision, who are you thinking of as the students of the future? Are they the same as sort of who we're seeing in university today, or do you see that there might be some breadth or growth in the diversity of students in the future?
It's a really great question to ask, and it's also a really interesting time to talk about that with the release of the Universities Australia Accord final report a few weeks ago. One of the things that report looks at, and for anyone listening that might not be familiar with it, it was the findings of a large-scale review of the higher education sector. And one of the key findings in the report is that the sector will need to grow enrolments. So the first thing, if we're looking towards the future of university education, it's that we're going to see, in all likelihood, a real increase in enrolments. And the report actually estimates that there will be up to 1 million extra university places by 2050. So if we're looking towards that timeline, the peak enrolment period would be about 2040. So if we're looking at the typical school leavers starting university in 2040, they're currently 2 years old. I have a 2-year-old. Thinking about her going into university, it's interesting because we know that so much is going to change. We don't have a crystal ball, so we don't know what it's going to look like. But we do know that the diverse demographics of our student body are going to keep growing. We've already got a very diverse student body, and I think we're going to see more and more of that because growing enrolments is going to involve increasing participation in higher education, particularly among groups that have been historically underrepresented. So that's students from rural areas, remote areas, low socioeconomic backgrounds, and so on.
This is probably a very obvious question. Why are enrolments going to grow so exponentially?
Well, one of the key findings in this report is that up to 90% of new jobs are going to require a tertiary education to enable the students to actually do the jobs. And some of the key areas that this report has highlighted will be in healthcare, which is no surprise to you, social assistance, technological services, education and training. So really what it's saying is that we need a more educated workforce going forward, and that's why there's an expectation that enrolments are going to grow.
If we just pop back to your 2-year-old daughter?
Yes.
2-year-old daughter, when you think about where she'll want to learn, what she'll want to learn about, you know, these kids are growing up in such a different world. Do you have an idea of what some of those big differences might be?
It's a good question. I think at the moment, if I think about what a 2-year-old wants, I can tell you I've got no idea. I wish I did. But I think, there can be a tendency when we're thinking about our education system to think about it based on the traditional models or the way that we went to university. But things are already very different than they were 10, 20 or 30 years ago, and that's going to change. So I think one of the really key differences is that the students coming into university already and in the future are digitally literate. They have grown up with technology. They're very used to it. And that's something that is going to be a key focus going forward.
In health, we're watching a real shift towards precision and individualised medicine. When we think about education, are you seeing or imagining a shift away from a one-size-fits-all style of education?
Yes, absolutely. I believe that even in education as well, we're seeing opportunities of students exploring artificial intelligence and having personalized tutors, where you can have a combination of holographic technology with artificial intelligence, and you have your own personalized tutor visually present with you in the room, teaching you in the language that you prefer. And one of the advantages of artificial intelligence in education is that it also creates an avenue for you to be able to create your own personalized learning plan. And in previous times, we see students having about 300 students to one guidance counselor or one education advisor. But one of the advantages of artificial intelligence is that you'll be able to have your own personal academic coach, guidance counselor, and at the end, you'll be able to have better learning outcomes at the end of the day.
When I did my 6-year undergraduate degree, time was moving at a slower pace. I feel like today, what I might be learning in year one might be less relevant or irrelevant by the time I'm actually practicing. It's an interesting thing, a degree. What do you think the value proposition of a university degree is moving forward?
Absolutely. I think that one of the values of the university degree, aside from the fact that it's going to be able to show that you have knowledge and skills in that specific field, but is the unique skills aside from the generic ones associated with your qualification that the degree is also going to give you. And when we're talking about that, we're talking about ability to be able to critically assess or analyze the information that is available. So with artificial intelligence, there's a lot of information online, and it's going to be more easier for people to learn. But that ability to critically assess the information and say, is this relevant, and also inculcate evidence-based practice into the different aspects of your daily job is what is going to be very important. So we're going to be seeing more people going to universities with a desire to be able to gain skills to think critically, and also skills to be able to work more collaboratively as a team, because most of the jobs require that you don't work in isolation. You work across board with different people rather than in silos. So the university degree is going to provide you with opportunities of working collaboratively, and also opportunities to be able to gain mentorship. We strongly believe that in the nearest future, we'll be seeing more people carrying out learning activities in work-based environments like internships and placements. So the degree is going to be able to give you opportunity to meet with your mentors in that field, and also gain hands-on knowledge as well.
I spent quite a bit of time at Manning Bar at Sydney University. I understand both of you are in Queensland, and so you probably don't know Manning Bar, but I'm sure you've got the same thing. And that was a big part of my personal and social development. And it probably is as big a part of my university experience as sitting in lectures or in an exam hall. As we move forward, and I suppose, COVID was an interesting exercise in looking at maybe not what the dream scenario is, but a different way of providing education. But we were really missing out on elements of that social development. Does the new view or your vision of the future, how do we balance this sort of idea of, well, I could be at home having a tutor come to me, with that sort of social development and networking and all the other aspects that a life at university brings you?
I think it's a great question, and I think the socialization aspect of education will remain a really strong focus going into the future. And if anything that COVID taught us, it was that people really missed being with each other, going to social events. I think we are social beings. And actually, if you look at the research about what motivates students to go to university and what motivates them to persist and succeed, yes, employability outcomes are really important, but underpinning that is a really strong desire to build connections with other students, to make friends, to build connections with staff, and to interact with other people, learn collaboratively. So I think the social aspect is really important, and it's just what it might look like might be different. So for example, in online learning, an important part of that is interactive online classes with discussions, working with other team members, and so on. I think that can provide that sense of connection, because we know that having a connection to the university and to other students is a real key priority for many of our students.
So the dreaded group project will still continue. That's what you're saying?
Well, I find in my own research, I investigate the student experience.
Yeah.
A lot of students will talk to me about group projects, and sometimes they don't like to be assessed together, but they actually do enjoy the process of working together, and we know that it's helpful for them in the workforce. The other thing, if you look at the research and student experience, and really if you look at the majority of university strategies across Australia related to student experience, you will see the word sense of belonging in there. Mm-hmm. And we know from psychological research that sense of belonging is an important human need, and that it can actually help students to persist in their studies when they feel that sense of belonging to the university. There's lots of different ways that can look. It's different for different people, but a key underpinning factor is being connected to others and feeling recognised and valued for your own contributions. And that is done really well in a group, but it's also not something AI can do to individually recognise you for your contribution to a group effort.
So it's going to be interesting, because the way people of my generation and maybe all of us connect is typically by being in a room and talking to each other. But my nieces and nephews, they like to be online with each other at a concert or at a football game or whatever. I can't understand it, but that's what they like to do. So is what you're saying that it's the connection between people rather than the medium of connection that remains critical?
Exactly. And it's different for different people. We mentioned at the beginning the diversity of our student body. Mm-hmm. Different students have different preferences. Some of them love to be on campus. Others, a hybrid mode is preferable. For other people, it needs to be online learning the whole time. But it's about the design. Good design is good design in teaching and learning. And we've had distance education and online education for a long time.
Yeah.
I think the first version of distance education in Queensland was back in the early 1900s, where they would send assessments by mail and return them by mail. So we've had a variation of this in many ways, but it's about the design, and you can have really interactive, supportive, collaborative learning in an online setting, but it's about that pedagogical piece. It's not just about the mode. So the technology supports the learning, not the other way around.
I actually agree with Jessica, but I just wanted to mention that we already have the technology currently available to be able to support interaction and engagement, because now you can combine artificial intelligence with holographic technology, and then you have students in a virtual classroom where they're able to interact with their colleagues and also have a virtual or a holograph professor teaching them, and then they're still able to have that feeling of interaction and engaging and seeing their colleagues even from the comfort of their home. And because we also made mention that the cohort of higher education is going to be very diverse, there's also a tendency that we might be seeing people who might be less interested in interacting or socializing in the university point of view or in the university as a location, but we might see people who might be socializing more in the workplace. And because we're also seeing more and more students desiring to have like apprenticeship degrees or workplace learning activities, so there might be a shift in the socialization location from actually being in the universities to socializing in the workplace. And I also believe that universities will be putting more emphasis on opportunities for students to participate in club and society activities, just to bring them back to the university to also socialize. So just like Jessica said, that there could be changes in the way we socialize, but definitely it's still going to be a core part of our learning.
You've mentioned hologram technology a couple of times. I'm interested in how you feel that creates a different vibe or feeling than, say, being part of a Zoom call or Teams or the like. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you feel that sort of changes things up?
Yeah, so I think with the hologram, one of the things that it does for you is that it gives you a better sense of interaction and a better sense of engagement. So with a Zoom meeting, it's more like you don't really get to see the 3D perspective of the person or the person in full. But with a hologram, you can have a better view, an improved view. You can chat, you can interact, and there are also technologies that even help you to even have a handshake with somebody in a hologram. And although the technology is still being developed, but of course, there are opportunities for it to be improved in the future. So it just gives you that improved opportunity to engage and also interact with your colleagues.
Yeah, I wonder, guys, thinking about the amount we get from an engagement with a person which is outside of the language that we speak, and I suppose that could be greatly enhanced.
Absolutely.
So that's
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Now you seem to be the man to go to on AI in education. So I'm at the moment, when I'm hearing about AI in education, there's a lot of scaremongering, particularly around originality of work and all of these sorts of how will we examine people. And I'm wondering, do we need to be as scared as the newspaper tells me to be, or are things okay?
Yeah, in my own perspective, I strongly believe that it's not something to be scared about. That is not to say that we shouldn't still allow oversight function and regulation of artificial intelligence, which I believe the Australian government is already doing alongside UNESCO. But it's normal in human nature that when you're faced with a new challenge, you have an option of either being afraid of it or fighting it. That's like the fight or flight response in physiology. But I strongly believe that with artificial intelligence, a better response will be to embrace this technology and also adapt to it. And by so doing, we're going to be able to use AI to harness HI, in other words, using artificial intelligence to harness human intelligence. And in the long run, we're able to have better outcomes for our students and also have improved or a more formidable workforce. So just imagine a scenario where every student have their own personalized artificial intelligence tutor, and also every teacher has a personalized artificial intelligence teaching assistant that assists them when they are making lesson plans, provides them with support even with the different learning aids that they can provide to the students, assist them with providing constructive feedbacks that is customized to every student's need. I guess it's going to be a really very amazing future for the students of the future.
Isaac, are there other technologies that we should be keeping our eye out for, things that are maybe in prototype or just emerging that are going to be exciting players in the education space?
Yes, definitely. Aside from the hologram, I think another important technology is the virtual reality or augmented reality. And for some people, they even have the mixed realities, where it's already being used in different courses to train students. So for instance, you can have anatomy students making dissections on holograms rather than using the conventional cadavers. And in the clinical settings, you can also have medical students carrying out general examinations on a virtual reality patient. And with the use of this virtual reality, you can also have a stethoscope where you can assess the heartbeat, the heart rate, and also check the pupillary dilation, check the mucous membrane, just in a bit to be able to improve their training. And interestingly, we could also have opportunities of live streaming surgical procedures to students in different parts of the world. So you can be a medical student seated in the comfort of your room, and then your professor or the consultant clinician is carrying out a surgery, and then it's streaming it live to you just with your virtual reality goggles. You're able to participate, observe the surgery, and then ask questions. So it's also very interesting. And we've also seen in other health sectors like medical imaging, where students are being trained to use virtual reality combined with holographic technology once again to be able to carry out measurements of the photos and also diagnose if there's a pathology in the photos. So the students are already being trained to use this technology, virtual reality combined with holographic technology and so on and so forth. And it's also very exciting that Internet of Things, blockchain, as well as other exciting technology that we're not yet aware of is going to be made available for students of the future.
Do you have any worry that the many, many countless hours of student-patient interaction which you have in a medical school, where you are going to the bedside and you're asking for generous patients to let you palpate their livers, part of that experience isn't just the palpating the liver, but learning how to interact with patient populations, how to behave respectfully, how to interact in a team environment, seeing things from the end of the bed? Do you worry at all that with all of these advances, which sound so extraordinary and exciting, that we're at a risk of losing some of the benefits of that face-to-face learning?
Not entirely, because in my own perspective, I believe that it's just going to be one of the options. It's not going to take over entirely. So the fact that students are going to be using the hologram as well as the virtual reality doesn't mean that they're not still going to interact physically with the patient, but it just gives them multiple options and more opportunities of interacting with the patient. So let's say before they go ahead to interact with the patient physically, they can actually have a preliminary interaction with a hologram patient or with a virtual reality patient, and then when they move on to interact with the patient, they're able to do that in a better way. So it's just
I can see the benefit of that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Look, working from home is something that we're all grappling with as a workforce acceptance. Like, I don't know, people have different expectations now than they had. I accept that we're talking about the opportunity for students to be at home, but what about educators? Where's the direction for academics in the future?
This is something we've actually talked about quite a bit. Again, different people have different preferences. So there's many academic colleagues that do like that flexibility of being able to work from home and to do their research and also teach at the same time in flexible ways. Whereas for other teachers, they like to be on campus doing in-person classes. I think what we'll see, what we already see and what we'll see more in the future is that those blended options where there might be a little bit of both. And I think as well, to your point about the online learning and then the in-person piece, I think what we're going to see more in the future is the lifelong learning piece where we're going to have continuous upskilling, short courses and micro-credentials where a student might be being taught online during the week, but then actually going into a workplace and putting into place some of those skills they're learning. So it'll actually really incorporate more of an experiential piece. And I think the different modes of being able to deliver that are going to provide us with more opportunities. So I sort of see a mix of both for the modes.
We talked a little bit about the speed of change and transition, and you're preparing a cohort to be workers of the future. Do you think there's an opportunity for faculty and industry to be more closely aligned in terms of making sure that there's the translation of the skills that we need in the workforce in the education we're delivering?
Definitely. And there's a lot of really good work already happening in that space. So if you look at universities across Australia, you will see many examples of courses with work integrated learning components, with authentic assessment. For example, you'll have courses where industry partners come into the course, pitch a real world live problem that they have to the students, and the students' assessment will be to work on solutions to that problem, often which they pitch to the industry, and sometimes they actually use their solutions in real life. Yeah. So I think there's a lot already happening here. I think where there is space for more to happen is at that program design level, and also in collaboration with the accrediting bodies of many of our professional programs, because they're really the ones that set that trend for what is expected in the industry and the standards. So I think there could be more connection there, and I think that's something that we're going to see more in the future as we move towards integrating the working life with our education programs.
You both work within two fairly conservative faculties, law and medicine, and these are quite conservative professions. Do you find that different faculties have more forward momentum in this space than others?
For me, I would usually say that it's more about individual preferences, I find. I think in anything to do with new education technology, you're always going to have some early adopters. Isaac and I would be among that group because we're really future focused. And then you're going to have other people that are a bit more cautious about the technology, which I think is completely understandable. So I find it to be more about individual preference, and part of our work and roles is to sort of work with people that are more cautious and show them and explain to them the benefits and the opportunities that these new technologies can actually provide to help support the teaching and learning. I don't know if you have another opinion on that.
No, I totally agree with you. Yep.
Isaac, we talked a little bit earlier about maybe the acquisition of knowledge becoming enhanced through the way in which we're able to access information. But that leads me to think a little bit about, you talked about the skill acquisition of a university degree maybe being broader than just knowledge. And I wonder if you think there are specific universal skills outside of critical thinking, which I think you mentioned before. Are they going to be universal skills that a university degree will give you across all faculties? And how will you teach some of these? We talk about them as being soft skills. They're definitely they're not easy. And so I'm wondering how you're going to bring that into a sort of a traditional teaching environment.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. Let me just start by saying one additional skill that I feel is going to be very relevant is your ability to be able to adapt. Because with technology, we see that the world is changing very rapidly. And one major skill that everybody must have if you're going to be able to thrive is to be able to adapt very rapidly. adapt in the sense of being able to learn the different technologies even as they've been unveiled, and being able to thrive in using them effectively as both students and also as workers. But I also strongly believe that aside from adaptability, you're also going to need resilience, because these changes are constantly happening, and if you're not resilient enough, definitely you will just drop out, and you will just feel like, okay, I've had enough of it, and I can't keep up with the change anymore. So adaptability as well as resilience are some of the core skills in addition to the ones we've mentioned previously. And like you said, these are soft skills, so there's not going to be one specific way of teaching it. There are things that I guess is going to be inculcated into the curriculum one way or the other. It might not be explicitly or obvious, but by going to university is one of the values that you'll be able to pick up.
I wonder if the way we enroll people or the entry point into various degrees will be different. I wonder if rather than a tertiary entrance rank or score, where they're going to be testing people for propensity to have adaptability or resilience. I just wonder, I don't know whether you have to have a baseline of these skills to be enhanced, or if everybody can learn to be adaptable.
Yeah, I guess it's a skill that everybody can learn to adapt, and it's something that provided you're interested. So it's going to be more of building people's interest and making them understand the value of being able to adapt and gain that skills. And if people see the interest, then definitely they want to gain the skills. And with regards to entry levels into the university system, I also believe that universities are going to be offering students with more opportunities to choose between what kind of degree do they want. Do they want a knowledge-focused degree, which is more like what we see more commonly now, where students spend about 80% of their time learning in the university system, and then about 20% of the time in placements. So I also believe that we'll be seeing opportunities where students will have an option of choosing if they want like an apprenticeship degree or a skills-focused degree, where they spend 80% of the time in a workplace where they learn, and then 20% of the time in the university system where they go on to also gain knowledge. And I strongly believe that most students are going to be interested in going with the apprenticeship degrees, because with the recent Accord reports, it suggested that students on compulsory work placements are also given opportunities to get paid. So we'll see students getting involved in earning and learning, and also being able to plow back whatsoever they earn to be able to sponsor their degree. So it's going to make it more affordable as well.
Well, I mean, very important for the nursing
absolutely
cohort.
Nursing, social work, and a lot of health qualifications.
Okay, you guys, papers down, free thinking, no rules. What could it look like? What do you want it to look like in 20 years' time?
Well, I want it to look more equitable and more inclusive. I would like to see, and I know many other people feel the same way, parity of participation and completion rates, particularly for groups that have been historically underrepresented in Australian higher education. So we would really like to see that change, and we are very hopeful that it will change. I think also that move towards lifelong learning. So when a student will have a continuous relationship with a university, or maybe with different universities, where yes, they might do their foundational degree that equips them with those key skills that they need, that you've mentioned, the adaptability, the capability, the communication, the leadership, the cultural capability, but that they might return throughout the course of their career as it changes and as technology and the world changes, to come back to university and to upskill through short form credentials and through that continuous learning process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even to drive the point home, I think it's going to give people the opportunity to be able to have these flexible credentials or dynamic credentials. So because the jobs are going to be changing very rapidly, the curriculum as well will be changing, and there should be opportunities for students or workers to be able to upskill or transform their credentials or qualifications to a way to a qualification that helps them to be able to secure jobs, to be more employable, and also build up their career more easily. So I think having those opportunities is going to be very exciting.
And I think another thing to think about, what I would like to see happen is, we've talked a lot about AI, and I know many people think it spells the ruination of education, but we see the opportunities. I think in the future, if AI can support us to perhaps take some of that load of administration and logistical tasks, it will actually free up resources and people to concentrate on that core business of really quality teaching and learning and supporting our students. And I think the human element of that and that connection is not something that's going to go away. I think it's going to become more important than ever. So I actually think we can harness emerging technology to help us emphasize the human element in learning.
How far are we away from having holograms in our bedrooms?
That's a tricky question, but what I can say, I won't say specifically that it's going to take
I'm going to
this
hold you
time
to
frame.
it, Isaac. Yeah.
But what I know is that the technology is currently available, and I think there are a lot of challenges still surrounding it, like aspects of refining the cost. So the cost is one major reason why it's not readily available at the moment. But I feel that with ongoing research, there's going to be more opportunities to make it more affordable and also more efficient for students to be able to utilize it. I just want to say that rather than being afraid about this technology, if we really want to be future-proof, then we must come to the point where we're also technologically proof. And to be technological proof, it means that we have to embrace this technology and, like I said, use it to harness our own human intelligence, and then we'll be able to have a more formidable workforce that can give us a better future.
That was the first time we've touched on cost of anything. Cost is probably a major barrier for a lot of people accessing a university level education, and yet the report tells us many more, hundreds of thousands and millions of people have to be university educated for a productive society. How are we going to do that?
I think that's a really important question to think about. We know that the cost is really, really difficult for many students, and it is a barrier. We know that the vast majority, up to 86% of our students, are working either part-time or full-time while they're studying. And we know that the cost can actually either prohibit students from enrolling or cause them to have to drop out if they can't afford to continue. I think some of the suggested changes to funding models may be useful there, but I also think the part that the report touches on about supporting those paid placements that enable students, if they need to do a couple of 100 hours in physiotherapy or nursing or whatever that placement might be, will really help that as well.
I know COVID was a very specific experience for academics and students who are currently at university, and I think it gave everyone a bit of a chance to look through door number one, but with a view to maybe closing door number one and looking for door number two in terms of how the future might look. But were you surprised by anything you learned or you received as feedback from staff or students about the COVID experience that sort of played a part or informed your view today?
I think, there was a lot of lessons during COVID, for every sector, but I think the higher education sector really was hit quite hard in many ways because in many cases, they weren't necessarily prepared to make that rapid change. There wasn't the infrastructure in place for models that have been traditionally on campus. Suddenly, almost switching overnight to online learning was really, really challenging. And a lot of people put a lot of work and time into making that happen. And I know that our students had to be very resilient as well. And it was really challenging. But I think one of the things I've learned from that and through my own research into the student experience is that there are many lessons to be learned, and the biggest one is probably that it does come back to that design. It actually isn't so much about the mode as I thought it was going to be. It's not really that you're either online or you're hybrid or you're in person, because you can have great learning experiences in any of those modes and you can have terrible learning experiences in any of those modes. It comes back to the quality of the design, which I think is the real key lesson that I've taken going forward.
Yeah, I think for me, one major lesson from COVID is a proof of concept that we can actually adapt. Okay. That's one thing, because we've been struggling to adapt to the technology for a long number of years, and then all of a sudden COVID hits, and then within 2 months everybody was able to adapt. So I think one major thing we can pick out is we're very, very able to adapt to technology.
Under pressure.
Absolutely, when necessary.
I just wanted to ask, in relation to health, as you guys well know, we work in very interdisciplinary teams, but we're not educated in interdisciplinary teams. We're educated in our silos, and we're not the only we're not the only career pathway where this is the case. I wonder whether you guys have given any thought to the flexibility of bringing cohorts of people together who will in the workplace work together earlier in their development.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one, and for most universities, we're seeing them encouraging interprofessional learning among students. And one of the strategies that I feel universities can employ to encourage students to work together, because they're still going to be doing that in the future, is in the aspects of their work-based learning activities. So during the learning process, if we can encourage universities to give students job tasks to be able to work collaboratively across different teams, or give them assessment tasks where they need to collaborate with somebody. Maybe if you're in paramedics, you need to collaborate with somebody in physiotherapy, or if you're in physiotherapy, you collaborate with somebody in sports science or exercise physiology, to work collaboratively to be able to solve a particular problem. I think that strategy can also be very helpful. And another step that most universities are taking is harmonizing the Faculty of Health and Behavioral Science. I know for some universities, the Faculty of Health is separate, the Faculty of Medicine is separate, but now we're seeing more and more universities harmonizing them and building one big faculty just to be able to help that collaboration and help interprofessional learning.
So if we were going to take away 2 or 3 key points from our discussion today, what would you like to leave us all thinking about?
Yeah, for me, I'd like to say that the future of higher education is very exciting, and it's primarily going to be driven by technology. And by the help of technology, we're going to be able to have better access, as well as improved efficiency and affordability for most of our students. So I would like to say it again, that it's something that we should embrace rather than running away from it.
And for me, I think it's that the technology will support us to help create that more equitable higher education future, and that really these emerging technologies can help support teaching, learning and student experience, but not take away from that crucial human element that really helps us connect and collaborate.
Jessica, Isaac, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much.